The Caro 45T is the official freak of World of Tanks. This tier 10 Italian medium tank has not only awful aim time and dispersion, but combine it with poor DPM and lackluster armour, it makes this tank seriously hard to play. But once you get the hang of it, this tank really can be devastating. Today's replay of course has the highest damage replay that we can see in the Caro 45T in update 1.19, and probably one of the best Caro 45T games you're probably ever going to see, and that's because everything went exactly right for the Caro in this game, and we're going to see an expert player be able to use this and come away with a result that is very outstanding. And you can see here it is primarily up against tier 8 and 9 vehicles with only 2 tier 10s on either side, so the matchmaker is definitely in the favour of the Caro. But the key thing is that if you can get this tank working in a way where you can keep the consistent damage actually going with this vehicle, you can still have brilliant results. But the problem is with the Caro is that the intricate reload is nothing special, and you combine that with the fact that the aim time is about 2.88 seconds, which is very bad, and you then combine that with the dispersion values when you're moving, as we talked about in the beginning of the video, you can end up missing a ton of rounds with this, and it absolutely sucks when it comes to that regard. And you'll see that within this replay, but you can see just how slow it takes to just aim a small bit towards the AE phase 1 there. And albeit, you know, sometimes you can play around the strengths and weaknesses of a vehicle, but when there's a lot of weaknesses and only a small amount of positives that can be used by a small proportion of the player base, a lot of the features of the Caro, including the speed, maneuverability and kind of consistent gun, when you actually get it in the position that it's supposed to be used, then yeah, you can make this tank work, but it's by no means a typical thing, and that's why it's a bit of a freak within the game. Now, you saw there 4 rounds going off within fairly small amount of time, and that's the key thing about this vehicle. You're seeing there the key weak point of the Caro when you look at the turret armour at this point is, when you have a look, it's the flat portion of the turret where you're seeing here the lower half of this area either side of the gun mantler is a weak point of the vehicle. You've also got this flat kind of area on the front of the vehicle here which can be penned super easily, so the hull armor absolutely sucks. You can side scrape a little bit with this thing, but for the most part I probably wouldn't recommend it, and yeah, that's really where this tank kind of can be a bit of a pain to play. Now, you're seeing some nice rounds land off on the T57 Heavy, but this is the problem now with this vehicle, is when you start having to fight multiple different people on different flanks all at the same time, the intricate reload or for the shell delay is not particularly great, and you've also then got the fact that you're going to have to reload from full when you fire all of those rounds at once, which you do have to do sometimes in this vehicle, meaning that you can end up with a 12-second reload just to do 400 damage. I mean, combine that with some of the medium tanks at the tier, because of course this is a medium tank in quotation marks, so even though it pretty much has a heavy tank damage per minute, yeah, you can definitely feel the sour end of the deal sometimes when it comes to performing with your gun. Now, in this replay you've seen nearly 5 minutes have gone and he's managed to pick up what, like 4,500 damage, and there has been absolutely no real misplays in this game. He's been using the tank as when he needs to. You could argue that maybe he's been firing off all of the shells when maybe he could have saved a shell to increase the reload like these Italian mediums typically prefer. So obviously when you've got all of the rounds in the clip, much like the Rinoceronte and the Progetto 65 that you've seen, you have to keep those rounds within the tank, and that way you can deal more consistent damage per minute. The reload gets better with more in the clip, and that's the kind of real crux of the Caro 45T, and why maybe people would prefer playing things like the AMX50B, which is essentially a similar sort of vehicle, gets the 4-shot autoloader, gets 400 damage per shell, has the speed, doesn't really have armour, much like the Caro, and of course has a much better kind of gun, in my opinion. Well, debatably a better gun to be able to kind of consistently deal damage, and that's why you see a lot more 50Bs within the matchmaker coming out with incredible results. And it's really where this tank requires that skill level and knowledge of the game and the kind of positions like we're seeing there against the STB1. Obviously highly knowledgeable player here to know the spots at which you can see the crosses and things where people will try and rotate around the map. And that's really where a player like this will dominate, and how he is able to dominate in a match like this. Now granted, he's managed to pick up 5,700 damage so far. You're probably thinking, oh, that's a very good game, of course the team are going to be winning, but as you see in the top of the screen, they're not really winning by much, only 200 damage, and so there is plenty more carrying, sorry, mind the pun there, to be able to have in this game, and of course lots more damage to be had, and that's why it's showcased on the channel, and why this little freak is going to be able to still survive and come away with the outstanding replay. So, bit of breathing time for the Caro in this game, and in terms of breathing time, there's plenty of time for you to hit the subscribe button. I'm sorry, it had to be done, but if you do enjoy the content, please do, because it massively helps out the channel, and even more so if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below, because at least you'll get some answers maybe, and if I don't know them, then maybe someone else can help you out, or maybe you're just looking for some advice or whatever it might be. Please don't hesitate to ask your questions in the comments. And of course there are also plenty of opportunities for you to have a look at some other replays if you have no interest in getting the Carro 45T, and whether you'd even want this vehicle, having seen this replay where, you know, I mean, everything's been done right, it's just taken an age to be able to get the damage. I mean, 8 minutes at this point, just under 8 minutes to be able to deal 7,300 damage. I mean, if you watch the Concept 1B video that we did recently, that tank managed to pick up 10,000 damage in a tier 9 within like 5 minutes, and it's just not possible with this tank. I mean, it is theoretically possible, because the damage per minute of this vehicle with the base is about 2,500, which, you know, combine that with 5 minutes, you're looking at 12,500 total damage that you can deal. But remember, is that not every round hits, not every time are you going to be able to fire as soon as you reload, and that can be the real annoyance with this vehicle. So it's looking like the teams are starting to separate in terms of the scoreboard. It's now 6,500 hit points to 4,700, and it's starting to look pretty decent. And of course, given the fact that there's been no real engagements within the last minute or so, it's allowed the Caro to fully reload. And you can see here, 8.7 second reload to do 400 damage. I mean, it's not bad, but you, even with that being the maximum damage that you can deal and the rate of fire that you can get with the Caro, you still have to argue, well, if you've only got 8.7 second reload to do 400 alpha, and you combine that's probably about 3,500 DPM, then yeah, and when you start firing more, you end up with a 12 second reload or even longer, that you start thinking, well, I could just play an Action X, which is going to deal pretty much the same amount of damage and reload much quicker, have way better reload, and you're going to be able to probably have way better damage per minute. And then you start thinking, well, the Action X isn't particularly amazing, what about some of the other medium tanks? And you start realising, well, there's not a great deal for you to really play this vehicle for the most part. And that's really where I think the crux of this tank is, as we've talked about. So, if you've played the Caro, I'm really interested to see what you guys think of it. Am I completely under-analysing the tank? Is this tank just completely different? And can you come away with results way better than any other medium tank? Or is it just the fact that, you know, you've got to hope that the situation in the game arises where you can reload your full clip and you can come away and you can deal your full clip, and then you can wait a minute and then deal your full clip again? You know, it's kind of interesting to see what you guys actually think about this tank. But Either way, a very lucky shot on the SMV there. You wouldn't typically be able to hit that usually, but remember, RNG is Wargaming's best friend, and when you're in a game like this, having done the amount of damage he's done, RNG kind of favours this vehicle. Now then, he decides he's not going to come around the corner to the Cobra, because there's no point at this point. And sorry to over convolute that, but what you're seeing here is, of course, he was waiting to be able to fully reload another shell, and that allows him to at least clip out the Cobra. And you're seeing here he doesn't like poking unless he's reloaded, and now it's time to actually wait that full reload and see whether or not he can start removing the Cobra's hit points, because at this point you're probably hoping to get over that 10k damage mark. And don't worry, as we've kind of already highlighted, that 10k damage mark definitely gets beaten. So a little spoiler there, apologies, but at least we can move forward in this game. And now then, guess we've got another little bit of breathing room, and you can see here the big lower plate. You've got that upper plate that's kind of less angled and can be penned. The very upper plate can indeed actually bounce a few rounds, but it's usually quite kind of unfortunate if you don't pen the upper plate of the Caro. And then the turret armor's pretty lackluster. You have the cheeks, as we saw here, that's been penned. There's this flat bar here and here that can be penned, as well as underneath the mantlet, the turret ring. You've got a cupola on the left hand side, and yeah, it can be certainly an annoying tank to play up against. Or play with up against vehicles like the Kranvang, for example, which for the most part have a way better turret, have a better intricate reload, and also have probably a more consistent approach to being able to have these high damage games, unlike the Carro. So yeah, this medium tank is certainly not really a medium, only in name, but either way, hopefully we can see a progression towards the Cobra. Of course, the Cobra, if left unchecked, could be a real annoying vehicle to play up against, because that thing just tears you a new one, especially when you don't have armor like you do with this vehicle. But what we have with the Caro is the speed that some of the other mediums don't have, and that's the, I guess it's kind of the key thing about the vehicle that separates it from some of the others, is that you can go 50 kilometers an hour. And I mean, you can reach that up even further if you were to use turbo or some of the other boosts that you can use to speed, which may be something you'd want to go with, but I would always recommend using things to improve the accuracy, the dispersion, the aim time, because that is really the proper negative of this tank. And of course, getting that as best as you can will really positively impact this vehicle. So game is starting to draw to a close, but it is in no way, shape or form a easy win, because there's still quite a few vehicles that can be a bit of an annoying vehicle to play up against. The SU-130 PM, obviously not quite sure what he was doing, but trying to retreat back to the bushes. I'm not that surprised, but he does get shut down, and we actually find out that the LT-432 is sat up by this ridge line over here, probably up by the house, sitting in the bush right there, and of course trying to find out where he is and get a shell into him. He may even be trying to retreat at this point, trying to get up into the bushes and escape, or he'll just be trying to come from behind, so of course he does. And now you're seeing a brilliant couple of shells into him, and there's only one Cobra left alive, but he has to pen both of the shells left in the magazine. No, he doesn't, because he gets hit by the STRV. And there you go, a fantastic result, nearly 12,000 damage within this game, and a fantastic showcase of the Carro 45T. But definitely don't take this as the actual rule for the Caro. It's actually the exception, I think, for the majority of players. And if you're going towards this vehicle, or if you ever see it again within the game, I probably would avoid it for the most part, if you are a player that does enjoy having decent DPM, good aim time, and a decent intricate reload. So yeah, certainly a freak, but one that can be played well in the hands of the capable. So fingers crossed you guys can pick this up if you do want it, But let me know what you think of the Caro in the comment section down below. But let's have a look at the post-game stats before we end up the video. So absolutely no surprise that there was, of course, a mastery badge sitting back in the garage when just Dave Leon managed to pick up this result, picking up probably the highest damage Caro game you've seen in a long time. And yeah, 11,969 damage, not quite pulling it over the 12,000, but still picking up 8 kills, having dealt a decent chunk of damage by any means, blocking 4,000 damage, which is a definite surprise. But remember, a lot of tier 8 and tier 9 vehicles playing up against him. Yeah, really good game. But of course, the Radley Walters Top Gun, Steel Wall, High Caliber and Tanker Sniper, Bruiser, Fire for Wreck, Duelist and Shellproof. So really good game by all standards, and hopefully you guys did enjoy this little freak within the game. Thank you very much for watching, and join me in one of these videos on screen right now for more action on World of Tanks. Goodbye.